How do I make decisions? Yeah. I think that like what you're saying about framing questions in certain ways is certainly helpful. Like open-ended questions are more difficult to answer. If I have really good background knowledge on something, then it's definitely easier. But like a specific ask is really helpful for me to give relevant feedback rather than just ramble. So I will pass to Enti.
Thanks. Yeah, so I think this is actually a good example. When I saw the question on the agenda, I thought about something. Then when you explain it and said and talked about like um the conversation with your friends, it sort of got I guess another meaning, or like it was pretty much almost like like another question. What I was thinking at first was maybe like I was going to say that I don't know, my God, depending on what the question is. Um, but what you say, yeah, I strongly believe that clarity is pretty much 90% of the question, or perhaps the answer, I guess. And yeah, with that, I'll pass it on to Nate.
Yeah, I think what I was looking for, it's not like maybe my example didn't help because it made it too specific, but I would love to understand what each person individually, like since we're all different from each other, we approach information in different ways. Some people are more abstract, some people are more direct. Like what helps you to to make this when you need to make a decision, how what do you need in that moment? Do you need more time, less time? Maybe this is too much of a broad question, and it might be like
Yeah.
not the best for people who prefer to be more have more directed information. So that might be that.
Well, when I have to make a decision, I need information. Like if I don't have enough information about what does that decision means, or like the impact of that decision, I would rather don't take it. You know it.
You had passed it to Nate, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think this is a really good question. I think information flow is definitely a big part of it, and in its relation to my confidence. I think confidence is really like what me personally. If I'm not confident about the outcome of the decision is what I intend, I don't execute on it. I just won't do it. And so the amount of information that I have is, if it's limited and it doesn't correlate to an increase in my confidence that the outcome of that decision will be executed in the way that I think it's going to be, then I just don't execute. And so what helps me most is, having that information flow available, whether it's from experts or from information that I can find on my own. But if it's difficult, or if there's any kind of challenges associated with finding that information, it becomes a huge blocker. Mainly because I personally don't like to. I hate producing something that I think is incomplete, and so, or making a decision that I think will lead to more problems. And so, I think that making sure that we're asking the right questions is a big part of that as well. Because I'll be, if I'm making a decision on something, I'm like, is this the last decision I'll make in regards to this issue? And if not, then I have to be able to map out all the decisions that need to be made in relation to it. And so those are all big barriers for me. So clarity of the problem and clarity of the solution. And so I think that all relates to information flow. But yeah, I'll pass it over to Teresa.
Hey, Teresa, are you there? You're muted if you're trying to speak. Let's pass it to Zaptimus, meanwhile.
Thank you, Libby. Yeah, for me, normally when I make decisions, I do them like slowly. Like when I just felt like joined the TC, like then I was like, yeah, just tasting it, like checking around, being around, and then when I do, when I join a DeFi protocol or whatever, like I just put there some money. Then after the month passing, then I might commit more depending on my experience. But yeah, normally what I like to do is like have my own experience, and then yeah, if I like what I'm doing and seeing, then yeah, getting involved. I don't know if that's what the question was about, but yeah, I'll pass it to Chui.
Thank you, Septi. I feel that awareness about the systems where we are making these decisions are a great first step, at least for me, because it is easier to accept when people motivations are different without necessarily like antagonizing or having these like failures of coordination while doing so in the process of taking a decision. So if we understand people's motivations behind these discussions or decision-making processes, I feel it is much better to empathize, and we can always have the opportunity to understand something that we are not seeing, because when we have awareness of this system, we also become aware of the role in the intentions and motivations that drive us. And then I feel it is a much easier starting point if we see our own selves as part of different combination of different backgrounds and decisions. Like if we can empathize at that level, I think it's a much better starting point for taking a decision, regardless of the outcome. So yeah, this is just something that was in my mind, and I'll pass it to Edu.
Thank you, Shui. How do I make decisions? Is there any context, or is just in general? Just in general, Libby. Just in general, okay. I like to think that I take two types of decisions. One based on emotions, which are usually decisions that are in a positive side, and then I take decisions extremely rational based on the information that I have. So it also answers the second part of the questions. To my emotional decisions, it helps me to know if it's like a safe emotional decision or it is not, and to my knowledge. And then in the ones that are rational, and I feel like I need to gather as much data and I need to read as much data as I can in order to make an assertive decision. But for me, it also goes back to the option of do not make a decision if you do not feel comfortable with. And that for me, it's key. Like I like to take out the pressure of deciding something and just wait until you actually feel comfortable enough to make that decision. Otherwise, I feel it's not, if you don't feel it, don't do it, basically. So back to you, Libby.
Thanks. I'll pass to Juanca.
Yeah. I always like to imagine multiple choices, and like if A, if B, and C, and like best case scenario, like normal case scenario and worst case scenario. and also how costly is each option. And I feel that I like to play safe. I feel there are different personalities, and some people like to gamble or like risky things, like winning, like, I don't know, the lottery or something like that. I don't know. I don't like anything of that. I so yeah, I try to not be too much risky, and I feel that's a pattern in my choice making. And yeah, I'll pass to, I don't know who hasn't gone.
Teresa, are you there now? Can you?
Yes. Okay, so how do I make decisions? Well, it depends if they're in my personal life or my professional life. If they're in my personal life, I'll just go with whatever feels good for me or what I feel is gonna be like, I don't know, like how it depends on how it makes me feel. Then when it's related to like my professional life, it depends if it only affects me. And if it only affects me, I'll go by the question how much I can learn about this. If I find that what I'm gonna learn is gonna be like valuable for me, I'm just gonna go for it. If I'm not gonna learn enough, it's gonna be like, oh, so I'm not gonna get into it. And if it's like for my clients or for someone else, I do a lot of research, like a lot of research. I just like gather a lot of information. I ask other people who are like involved. I just need like a lot of information to like reassure it's the best option for that case in particular. So yes, basically that.
And hey, Jeremy, we're having this intro question of how do you make decisions? What helps you the most to make them? Do you want to share?
Yeah, I'll give you a hot take because that's my style. What helps me make decisions and how do I make them? So two things come to mind, like networking other people's brains together with my brain is really helpful to help me make decisions, and fast and loose would be the other point. So just lead. You can't see me, but I'm leaning in with my big belly, right? Just lean into that gut factor and go where it says. Anybody else?
Manu?
Yeah, sure. It wasn't until lately that I've been looking into decision theory, because I realized I didn't have like a framework for making good like rational decisions, and like I'm very stimulation oriented, and that clouds my judgment. So I started to make decisions by like listing the possible alternatives and like identifying like the outcomes that each would have, and then listing the payoff that one would have. I also like looking into what other people have done before me that might be have more experience than me. So I like emulating what others have done before me. Um, but yeah, I'm actually working on a forum post to like provide a framework to enable rational organizational decision making. Uh, but yeah, in terms of what I do, it's yeah, what I mentioned, and I think I was the last one, so I'll pass it back to you, Livy.
Yeah. Oh, there's so much here. I love it. I think there's a whole. I'll look back into these notes after and see what we can take from here. But it's great to learn more about you guys. Thank you. And so we have two main topics.
To creep one thing in there, Livy, this is actually a beautiful segue because the session that we're going to do in the Gravity Practice Group in the next hour is going to be on deep democracy and decision making. So if you can sneak in.
Cool. Yeah, thanks for the invite. So we have two main topics for today, and I'll start with the boundaries between working group services and TEC because it feels a little more urgent. So in the last sprint retrospective, Juan was talking about the services that Gravity is providing and how it's connected to other communities, other DAOs. And it just rang this bell of like, oh, maybe it's important for us to look at the boundaries of how TEC working groups or working groups that are taking its own shape into DAOs, if there are things that don't overlap anymore with the TEC, and how to keep this work streams sustainable and not harmful for everyone, but also allow space for funding to come into these working groups and for everyone to benefit from it. So thank you, Juan, for opening this issue. And I'll just read it quick and then you can share your thoughts. I would also like to hear from Chewy that has been doing a great work with the team and the comms group, that it's also taking like a shape of its own, and hear from other working groups if there are similar challenges and how can we approach this. So that's what you wrote, Juan, that we want working groups offering services and we also want some TEC exclusive service. How can we coordinate so that we don't overlap? And also bring rewards to both TEC and working groups. So how can we integrate between working group offerings and TEC offerings, working group offerings funneling into TEC? I find this word a little difficult, services, TEC services. I don't know why. Maybe it's just, it feels a little like corporate for me, but maybe it's just, maybe I just need to understand more. What do you mean about this?
Yeah, is that I think that I mean by services all the activities that could be um, um, revenue streams for the TEC. And also, yeah, and also services as revenue streams for the working groups. So like, how can we offer like services within the working groups that then can connect with TEC services as reward making activities for the TEC, maybe for our common pool or for yeah, or I don't know. We still don't have that much services, but I know that that's something that we can provide, and I think that we have some really good services around the cultural build and around some toolings and also some design frameworks like the bonding curve and stuff like that. And I think that we can help other DAOs to implement that bonding curve, their bonding curve or their cultural build through the experience that we have here. But it's also something that, okay, it's the common stack framework. So how that would also then lead to another organization who has also some of these um, um, relevance in this topic. So yeah, for me it's very important and interesting to have this conversation because it's also a lot of DAO to DAO, and also yeah, I think that for my ideal and my propositive and my proposal would be that each DAO, like a working group, can offer yeah, specialized services and then connect to the other services that offer the TEC, or the other working groups. Like, for example, maybe there's a community that can have a conflict, and then they are saying that their conflict is related to a lack of visibility or participation in social or in communications. So maybe we can say like, okay, then we can connect you to the comms teams, and that way we can like like redirect from one project to another. So it's just my idea.
So, if you don't mind, I would like to comment on this real quick, Livy. So I've put a lot of thought into this idea of DAO services, or service DAOs, if you will. And I think it's amazing that this can be a very important avenue for revenue generation for the TEC. However, there is a huge vulnerability that I have concerns about with service DAOs, and that it involves like, how do we keep the service DAOs aligned with the mission of the TEC? For example, if you were to take Comms DAO and they start to produce communication services for token engineering projects that further the mission of the TEC, and all of a sudden, they're doing a really good job, they're making money, but then DeFi protocol comes over and says, hey, we want you to do services for us. And all of a sudden, you're making a lot more money providing DeFi services for that, and Chewy and the people he's able to expand his squad. And all of a sudden, you're getting a bunch of DeFi people in there. Now the priorities have changed, the culture has changed, and your token engineering is kind of on the back end of things. And so you have this risk of like, it's kind of similar to like the Sushi Swap vampire attack, where you can come in and basically use the startup capital that Comms team and the human capital that they've created around this service and apply it for a different mission. And so there's nothing there to keep the TE service DAOs in alignment with the mission of the TEC. And that's a huge concern for me. And that's just kind of a macro perspective of something that I get worried about. So for me, it's about value alignment. How do we keep these TE services aligned with the mission of the organization of the Commons? And so I just wanted to comment on that before we get into it.
Thanks, Nate. I have strong opinions about this topic, so I'd love to hear everyone else. Chewy, do you want to share?
Yes, Livy. I've also been putting a lot of thought into this. I don't have any specific conclusions, but I've been trying to just apply some of the observations that we've had at Comms. Like right now, I'm very excited around the T Academy team work, because they are bringing a lot of attention to the T fundamentals course. So I feel, let's say that's on one side. And then on the other side, we have all of these people coming into the TEC, but just like plain requesting token engineering services. There's this idea of the TEC being like a raid guild for tokenomics. It's a romantic idea. It's I like it, but we're not there yet, right? So I feel that it's a very interesting like point of balance, where we see the T Academy team working on one side on something that can have a potential effect on this other issue that we're having. So I'm starting to see and ask myself, like, how can we approach most of these issues through communications? Like, how can we make like these bets or have these like seeds that are going to be solving problems that we don't know that they're here yet, right? So I've been contemplating this from this perspective. Also, while Griff was in Mexico City, I talked to him a lot just reflecting on the teams, on the wider purpose that they have. This is why a lot of changes around the animation and video production team started happening, because we said like, hey, like, I mean, this can of course help advanced token engineering, but maybe not at this point, because most of the supporting educational material that we need, like how are we gonna be doing supporting material for stuff that isn't ready yet? So from a Service DAO perspective, I talked to the team, and we were like, hey, like, we might do better like somewhere else, right? Like we need the reward system quantification process tutorial. But other than that, I mean, of course, we could put together a bunch of stuff for T Academy courses, for the dashboard, for so many stuff that we have developed, but nothing is written in stone yet. So I feel that could be like an interesting case to just to discuss, because what happens if this team finds better sources of revenue in other DAOs, right? Like, I mean, the TEC has been putting a lot of effort and stewarding capabilities into putting these teams together, and how can we, like, it comes back to the same example that Nate was mentioning, like DeFi protocols that have resources. So yeah, it's I wanted to just like openly said what I've been thinking about and what I've been learning during these past weeks. As I said, I don't have a particular conclusion, but I feel like these are some of the elements that I've been learning with, and that I wanted to put out there also for your consideration. So yeah, I'm also looking forward to listening to more feedback on that.
I also want to share. For me, this, what's important is like the money those services take from the TC, this money gets back to the TC somehow. Like, if you are taking money from Gravity for the TC funding, it's because it can be anything. Like, you can consider Gravity at the public good. So, that can be one source of value you're giving to the TC. But maybe with comms it's more clear. Like what Nick was saying, like, if comms asks money from the TC, then as long as with the money they ask, they are doing what they say they are going to do for the TC. In my opinion, that's enough. And if in the future, like a DeFi protocol tells them to do some work and they pay more, like I don't even think like these groups should send the money back to the common pool unless they want to. They should be free to do whatever they want with their freedom. Yeah, that's my opinion.
And to jump into the fray, I definitely appreciate.
Can I just ask a clarifying question to what Zeptiman said, and then I'll pass back to you? I think I didn't understand what you said about giving back the money to the TC. Was there maybe there was a conversation about that? I meant.
No, not money as money, but for example, in transparency, if I'm doing, okay, I ask this money, I'm going to build an audit and all these YouTube videos. So, be accountable with what you're saying you're going to do on the, who is the TC being benefiting from this proposal. And as long you are, you are aligned with what you were saying there, for me, it's enough. And then whatever you do after with other sources, with other people, I think it's up to the freedom of everyone.
Okay.
So I'm really, really sorry, Jeremy. I just wanted to throw in something in there that I also didn't want to leave behind. I feel that also, like, the way you're thinking about it, Septi, also can answer to different kinds of like models. Because, for example, the example that I said with the T Fundamentals course and how the T Academy team is putting a lot of effort behind it, I feel is going to directly or maybe indirectly benefit the TEC, because that course is going to bring in a lot of token engineering talent in the next few months. So if we have more if we have more members in the TEC, I feel that's a very direct form of adding value. If we have more token engineering capabilities, that adds value. But like what I really had a lot of trouble to wrap my head around, and it's like for the animation team, it's like, but why? How are we doing this? Like, are we paying these animators full time and then offering services, but those services are going to be benefiting the common pool directly? So I was trying to find a way, but then I said, like, no. I mean, it made me uncomfortable how similar it is to traditional systems and to traditional ad agencies. It's like, yeah, I own your hours, I own your amount of work, and I also own all of the revenue. So that's also something that I kind of had conflict on, and yeah, like I just wanted to mention it because you said this part about like people having this option to whatever funds they get back donated voluntarily to the common pool or keep them. So yeah, I feel that it's just like shaky grounds for me, because I feel that we start meditating more around like already broken systems instead of coming up with a better idea.
I think if you force people to pay your DAO with TEC tokens, I think that can be a solution for that problem. So anybody who wants to have your services must purchase TEC from the bonding curve and pay you through that.
Brilliant. I think that's a great solution. So to maybe weave a couple things together. So it seems to be some awareness that there is a wide sort of opportunity space in terms of the cultural fit and the work that might approach these service DAOs, and whether or not that work is highly represents and reflects the values in the TEC. Is sort of a field of tension to be sort of explored. And I really like this idea about having them pay via TEC tokens. I think that's just fucking brilliant, really. But I think that if we're looking at an unknown territory, the only way we're going to find out is by exploring it, right? And that's we're probably not going to do it right the first time, right? We're not going to have the most ideal form, but as long as we continue to explore it with some degree of sensitivity about what the possible pitfalls are, and keep our eyes wide open and our head on the swivel about what the pitfalls we discover as we're doing it, we'll just learn our way through it, more or less. Anybody else?
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's no denial that there is value on any service that we can provide as an open source. I mean, we label ourselves as an open source space and so on. So for me, there is no denial on this. My main concern is sustainability of these services. And I don't mean this to offend anyone, but I think, and my lack of knowledge, this also have to know that, on my lack of knowledge, I feel like sometimes we lack proper planning, or like a horizon, or like a what is the deliverables, what will be the time frame this will be happening. Because otherwise I feel like in the meantime we have been speaking about paying for X or Y in the future, but I don't see any kind of, and again, this is my lack of knowledge, but I don't see any indicators, any like, hey, I will probably I will try to aim to 2 DAOs in 2 months, or I will aim to provide this service to 4 or 5, 1, I don't know. So I see there is no strategy for these services. I don't see the alignment in between these services. I don't see how we can, if, for example, and this is again my lack of knowledge, so please correct me if I'm wrong. Like, for example, if Gravity is going to go to X DAO, is there already a plan in place to also suggest, hey, we also have a comms DAO? So, like, have this kind of 360 degrees approach to the services of the TEC, because at the end of the day, it all comes from the same space. It all comes from the same pool. Therefore, I will imply that there should be a strategy of how we tackle this, and along the strategy, a time frame where we don't keep draining the pool without any sustainability, just on the promise that there will be a future return of that. Because I feel it's nice to know that there will be a future return, but also we need certain benchmarks in order to be accountable. So that's it. Back to you, Liv.
I like that idea of like kind of a subscription model.
Other thing that I was thinking was like projects that become a DAO and maybe have a gardens. They may and create their own token. They can have like a percentage of their token linked to the TC and in a liquidity pool, and that way if the project goes well, then the TC benefits from it too. And yeah, and it can be done with a percentage of maybe the funds that the project has at that moment.
Something I don't like about the phrasing of the issue. Like it said something like differentiating or the boundaries between working group services and TEC services. If we consider working groups as like having like providing their own set of services, then it's like, oh, what's then the service of the TEC? Because like everything that happens on the TEC is throughout working groups, and if working groups have their services, the TEC doesn't have a service, you know.
So
And so I think it's yeah. Oh.
Sorry, I just want to say that I think that's the beautiful part of this type of model is having service DAOs. Like, I think if you ignore the idea that the TEC is an organization for just a second and just think of it as an economy, and you have these service DAOs out there with the mission of advancing token engineering, not for the service of some type of central organization like the TEC, but for token engineering as a cause. I think that's why it's really beautiful that we stop thinking of ourselves as an organization, as a TEC organization, and just think of ourselves as an economy, and that we're operating in this economy to provide this service for this mission and this cause. And so, like, yeah, sorry.
I mean, that's fair, but like maybe on the sense of sustainability or accountability, like we have to. I think that's fair that we sort of, you know, we don't have to call TEC an organization. It can be a community as well. But if there's not like a full circle around, you know, let's say the funds, for example, like if the TEC is a community, it's an economy, and any working group can go ahead, ask for money, and then like the return isn't necessarily clear. Or for example, all working groups, I guess they benefit from the structure and from the work that other working groups put. I don't think it's necessarily fair that we separate the services um, of working groups from the economy itself. It's on the same sense. Like the economy provides something. So is it the economy that provides that service in this case, or is it the working groups within that economy?
I think what is misguiding in the issue is just framing TEC as a service provider. Like, I don't think the TEC is a service provider. The TEC is a community that wants, with a shared purpose of advancing the field of token engineering, and then anything that is related with that purpose can be supported by the TEC, and that is the mission of the commons. And I think that if we think of the commons as this like living entity of a complex economy that is governed by its members with a shared purpose it makes it easier to understand how if working groups have a purpose that is aligned with the purpose of the commons, then this is beneficial for everyone. But then the purpose of this call now is to understand what is the boundary of that. So when does a working group stops being aligned with the mission of the TEC because of some services that they're providing to have sustainability. Like we want the TEC to support the working groups, but it's also great that the working groups can support themselves. And this is a conversation we've been having for a long time of like how to create sustainability for these multiple work frames.
I think
to Craig. Hi, Craig.
Before, if we pass it to Craig, I want to comment on this that you mentioned about regarding the boundaries and when a working group. I feel like this is why it's necessarily to have boundaries in the form of data for us to understand, if after 3 months of receiving funds from the TEC, you can, and I see in the data that you present as a audit or whatever you want to call it, what has been the work you have done for the TEC versus what has been the work that you have done for other or for the services area. If that is not, I'm not going to say even, but that is not sustainable. Like you can see it with a proper audit, basically how your funds were spent. And if you spend more time helping other spaces rather than helping the TEC, then that's where I see that's a clear boundary of, hey, this is not right. So unless, of course, the time spent has been even, or the amount of funds or the justification of the time spent in other providing these services is justified with also data. But I think there should be those boundaries for me should be based on things that we can see and attest, not only on on the facts or promises that it will advance stock engineering. But I guess that's a very catchy phrase that we tend to use, but not necessarily put into actual what does it mean. So, Craig.
Yeah, I just wanted to say hi and welcome, Craig, if you're there and if you feel inspired to share something on this topic. I just wanted to, yeah.
No, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I just wanted to comment on, I think what Chewy said is very on point of like understanding what types of proposals can be aligned with the mission of the TEC, and then seeing what types of things might not be aligned right now and could receive funding from other sources. And then whenever that converges back to the TEC, that can be brought back in. But like understanding that, like having that clarity, and also to something you brought up before, Juan, of the separation between common stack services and what the TEC has developed. I think most of the things we created for the cultural build would fall under the common stack patterns. So the cultural build, for example, like providing some type of assistance or support to other projects related to the cultural build. I think this is out of scope of the TEC because I don't see how this would be advancing the field of token engineering, or it's the same as like we used to say this a lot when trying to understand and explain the mission of the TEC, that we want to create best practices for token engineering, but not to create token engineering models for projects that want to have a token. So I think if it is that line that we constantly need to be assessing of like, is this just helping one project, or is this a model that will help, like a framework that can help the field and not be like directed to something in specific.
Super interesting.
I guess the question that I want people to think about for this is just the alignment one, the value alignment one, because I think it's a very good idea that these working group and these DAO services become self-sustainable. And if that means going around and offering services to other people, that's fine. But how do we keep them aligned with advancing the field of token engineering? Because if we fail to do that, then all we've done was create a Team DAO to become a comms company that just makes money for the sake of making money, and they could separate themselves from the TEC economy altogether. And we've left token engineering high and dry with no comms team, no comms support. And so that is just the biggest fear I have with this type of system. And like, I think if we can figure out how to incentivize the alignment, maintaining long-term alignment of these DAO services to the mission of the TEC, then we've solved that problem.
Well, but maybe then just other comms groups would emerge. I don't think it's necessarily a problem if like the comms team became something bigger, and it's, I don't know, it was incubated in the TC and had and it was so valuable for the TC for a long time, and then it has a different route that it eventually takes. I think we've been creating enough material for things to emerge. And if gravity becomes like too big and starts to get many other projects, and then TC needs are left behind, maybe there could be like other things that emerge. And there, I think there is space for this malleability, for this like emergence, if we always commit to being aligned with the TC mission, because then you will feel very resilient and strong, this base, and things will be able to move more, I think.
I think I've changed my mind, I guess. Instead of thinking about the relationships of the working groups with the TEC, we could think of the relationships of the individuals with the TEC. Like, me as an individual, I have the agency to come to the TEC and help out, and I'm growing with the TEC. But I might not go back. Like, I might go to other project and never go back to the TEC, or like I'm simultaneously contributing to multiple DAOs. What matters is the time I spend with the TEC is the time I spend with aligned with the mission, right? And so I think those same concepts could apply to a working group. The working group is a set of people, but we can consider them almost like individuals. They have the agency to come, they ask for funding. If like the time and resources they waste in exchange of the funding is reasonable, they did their job and they can leave and whatever, I think.
I want to say two things, and one related to how to remain aligned. Maybe there could be like an agreement that can be signed um, you know, we are working on this of unbreakable vows, and Semi's thinking about how to get this value aligned from the people that get funds from conviction voting. So maybe it can be done, I don't know, through a collateral, and that would be interesting. Like the moment that you are not value aligned, there can be a collateral removed. And yeah, the other thing that I wanted to say is that I think that, like, we are advancing token engineering by helping other communities. That's a way that we can see the Service DAO point of view, thinking of advancing token engineering. Maybe I think that Gravity is something that would be valuable for communities, and by providing Gravity to other communities, those other communities could increase their coordination or stop losing so much time around conflict, and maybe that would help them reach their goals and then advance token engineering. And yeah, the other thing that I wanted to say was yeah, related to Ostrom. Like, the eighth principle is nested enterprises. So that's like what I am having, like, in my mind every time that I'm talking. I am having like nested enterprises. How can the working groups be its own enterprise, but at the same time, like, coordinate and relate with bigger enterprises, with other DAOs, with other DAOs inside of the TC, and within the TC. So it's just, yeah, that's what I am always thinking, that it's the scenario.
Yeah, and this doesn't need to be in, like, the nested enterprise doesn't need to be fully nested within the TC boundaries. It can be part of the same ecosystem, or it can be overlapping in some places and not in others. And it can be like coexisting with other similar organizations that have a shared purpose. I think this can work in multiple levels. And I feel like helping other communities to achieve their purpose, it's not necessarily connected with advancing token engineering, because their purpose is not advancing token engineering. Maybe if it was a community that its purpose was to also advance token engineering, or that it had to do with outcomes related with token engineering, it could be more in scope, in my opinion. But I feel like it's not necessarily because it's helping a community that it would be in scope of advancing token engineering. But this is also, and for having vows or agreements, I think the proposals are already these vows and agreements. Like, conviction voting is already that. If there's not an agreement on what is being proposed, but that just won't pass, and then there's not a commitment there. Or yeah, is there, were you thinking of something different, like what how could an agreement be, what would be the difference of an agreement and a proposal for something like this?
That's the proposal, right? No, I was just. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I think that it would be something like that. The funds, even though that are passed for a proposal, they are held by a contract that distributes them through KPIs, and if the KPIs are not, or if the agreement is not fulfilled, then the people who sent the money into the contract can place a collateral and withdraw some of the money that was given before the next execution of a proposal. But I mean, this is very raw, but it's something we are working on.
Can you post a link here? I think I just need to understand more.
Yes, yes.
Thank you. And we're on the top of the hour. Thank you everyone for joining. Lots of helpful thoughts. I think there's a lot to process here. I would love if anyone wants to help to find some insights and takeaways from this call that we can explore more going further.